Hi, I'm Barb.
Hi, I'm Pat.
Pat and I have a lot of interesting conversations.
Yes, and we thought you might like to listen in to our podcast that we've called Coffee House Inspirations.
We hope you will enjoy our topics.
Good morning, Barb.
Good morning, Pat.
How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. I'm great, in spite of the fact that it's kind of a great cloudy day, and I can see a little bit of snow.
I see you looking out the window as you're saying great. You're going, I think we're great.
I know, but I'm just so happy that we're getting moisture right now, and I actually don't care what kind it is.
I know.
I was talking to a friend of mine last night, and they've got these raging forest fires in Manitoba because it's so dry.
Oh,
so I just feel like fortunate just to have moisture coming. So
I would prefer rain over snow, but I mean it's all just going to melt anyway. So
yes, well, it is the 20th of May. So.
And it is, yeah, and it is still green out. So
yeah, we're trying to pull the best possible scenario out of this that we
That's
can.
right. Yeah.
Anyway, so today we decided that we're going to talk about synchronicity and what it is and what it isn't, and how to get more proficient at recognizing it and such. And so how about you start out with a little definition of what synchronicity is?
Okay, well, I've got a little one here, but I'm going to read the longer one here. So synchronistic experiences leave us with a curious sense that we should pay attention. They happen when our inner worlds of thought and feeling connect with the outer worlds of people, places, and things. If we think about something and then it appears, there is a mystery involved that is both arcane and fascinating. Perhaps our soul is extending its collaborative spirit so that we may become aware of something that requires our attention. Perhaps it's simply a coincidence. This depends wholly on what you're willing to believe.
Right. That's a very good one. I like that, because what we had talked about is that when we go into this topic, you have to stretch yourself a little bit beyond sort of the physical world.
Mm-hmm.
Because what we now know about quantum physics, and please, Lord, don't let there be any physicists listening. What we do know about quantum physics is that nothing is really solid matter. That everything that we see, including us, are sort of atoms and subatomic particles that are so minute that but when you look through the biggest of microscopes, all these things are just in constant motion, and there really is no solidity about it. So that when we're looking at this, this area of synchronicity, we're kind of in a way, we have to look beyond the physical, because that's not where you'll really find all this stuff. And you mentioned also the idea of the sort of the messages to the soul, and so you have to go kind of a little deeper into the non-physical than you would normally do, right? Because then,
which I think people have to do anyways on other things, like a person's faith, like a intuition, when people get a feeling about something, that's all kind of like invisible. So
and it's a hard sell for some people, because we're so trained in in that idea that what you see is what you get.
Mm-hmm.
And we're hopefully we're getting quite a distance beyond that, because for the most part, what you see is really not what you get.
That's right.
I also have been reading this book by Jean Shinoda Bolen, which I will mention on the notes. It's called The Tao of Psychology, Synchronicity and the Self. And she was is a Jungian analyst, and she studied the work of Carl Jung, who was a proficient, a Jungian analyst. And he was in fact the person who coined the word synchronicity.
Okay.
Because he was looking at, this was in the kind of early 50s when he was publishing some of this stuff, that the traditional psychological assessments were not really inclusive of everyone, because people were having experiences that couldn't be explained. They were having, intuition hits that couldn't be explained. And, Sigmund Freud was very tied into the traditional model of the human mind. And so he really went off on his own and started looking at this whole concept of synchronicity. And I'll just explain, just describe one thing. He says synchronicity is a descriptive term for the link between two events, like you were saying, that are connected through their meaning. A link that cannot be explained by cause and effect. To illustrate synchronicity, Jung described an incident with a patient, a woman who always knew better about everything, and don't we all know somebody like that? Analysis consequently was not going well. And I'm just going to read the little, it's just kind of a long paragraph, but I found it so interesting. And then we can.
Okay.
After several fruitless attempts to sweeten her rationalism with a somewhat more humane understanding, I had to confine myself to the hope that something unexpected and irrational would turn up, something that would burst the intellectual retort into which she had sealed herself. Well, I was sitting opposite her one day with my back to the window, listening to her flow of rhetoric. She had an impressive dream the night before in which someone had given her a golden scarab, a costly piece of jewelry. While she was still telling me this dream, I heard something behind me gently tapping on the window. I turned around and saw it was a fairly large flying insect that was knocking against the window pane from outside in the obvious effort to get into the darker room. This seemed to me very strange. I opened the window immediately and caught the insect in the air as it flew by. It was a scarab beetle, whose golden green color most nearly resembles that of a regular golden scarab. I handed the beetle to my patient with the words, "Here's your scarab."
Wow.
This experience punctured the desired hole in her rationalism and broke the ice of her intellectual resistance. The treatment could now be continued with satisfactory results.
Oh, that's great.
I mean, that's a little, probably a little more dramatic than what the experience that most people have with synchronicity, but it's so beyond the kind of the expectation, the usual cause and effect that you would have to stop in your tracks and with your mouth open and go,
Yeah.
"Oh my God, what just happened there?"
That is really cool. I wish I could hear the rest of that story.
Well, that's the end of it. Then she goes on to have a much more productive, psychoanalysis, because she was now open to a new idea, where she had originally come into the session with he said which she had sealed herself into the intellectual retort.
Yeah.
Nice way of putting something else, but anyway.
That's a great example.
So have you had examples?
Yeah, I do have one, and I think this is synchronicity. I was trying to think of whether that's what it was or not, but maybe you can tell me after I finish. So about 20 some years ago, I had been dating this guy, and we had decided that we were going to get married. And we had a very short courtship, maybe about a year and a half. But in that time, we did have a Valentine's Day. And so he had given me lots of cards, and you know how you are in your first year. And I had Valentine's Day cards and stuff. Well, then he suddenly passed away from a heart attack at the end of October. So his daughters were over in come February, and because we were going through the apartment, I was moving out, and so I was gathering up all of my stuff, which I had already done. I had gathered all the cards and most of my stuff. So it was Valentine's Day, and his daughter, where she found it, I don't know, I can't remember, found a Valentine's Day card to me from him. Wow. So he'd already been gone for about 5 months. It was Valentine's Day. And so when she brought it to me, I felt like he was giving me a Valentine's Day card on Valentine's Day from the beyond. That's how it felt. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Well, that's a really good example, because first of all, you had taken most of your stuff, so you wouldn't have found it when you got home.
That's right.
And so it came through his daughter, which is kind of an almost an acausal effect too, because that's not necessarily a rational movement of things. And for him to have prepared a card that far in advance is in itself kind of interesting. So I would say yes, indeed, that was a synchronistic event, given that it was Valentine's Day. Come on, let's get specific here. And I think that's very cool and very good example, because when you try to look at that just strictly from a linear logical point of view, I mean, you could make something of it, and you could probably pull something together if you were desperate. But from the point of view of a synchronicity, the fact was that you and the daughter had to be there at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
He had to have found the card. It had to be Valentine's Day.
I know.
It's kind
Well,
of
yeah, and the card had been one that he gave me the year before. It wasn't a new one. It was one that he had already given me. Well, I had taken all of my cards home already. I thought I had all of my cards. So where this one was, I don't know. So he had written in it and everything. So it's like so it wasn't blank, or like it wasn't a card that he was planning on giving me. He had already given it to me, but he was re-giving it in a sense.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah. How about you?
Well, I just had something happen yesterday, which was kind of interesting, because I do these exercises every morning, and I do some yoga and this and that and the other thing. And so when I do listen to some things on YouTube where I use them as guided sort of exercise things.
Mm-hmm.
So when I finish that, I usually just listen to something that I'm interested in listening to while I finish the rest of whatever I'm doing. And so I've been kind of following a lot of the recent work that we've been talking about, also with Bruce Lipton and Joe Dispenza and Greg Braden. And, I find things on YouTube that are informative. And I did find something, but then I was looking down the right-hand side of, how they show all the other things that you can watch if you're interested in this one thing. And I saw a little picture of Deepak Chopra at the bottom. And I thought, oh, I haven't listened to him for a long time. So I brought it up, and it was on synchronicity. Which is,
I did that one too. Sorry, go ahead.
What we happen to be watching today. And so he's referencing this book that he's written. He's talking to somebody. They're at a conference or something, and he's referencing this book, and he's talking about this book that he's written on synchronicity. And I thought, wow, I don't ever remember reading specifically anything that he wrote on synchronicity. But the book is called The Spontaneous Fulfillment of Desire. And I said, hey, I've got that in one of my library somewhere. And it's called Harnessing the Infinite Power of Coincidence. So I went and got it, and I have had it marked from beginning to end, yellow highlighter, orange highlighter, sticky notes, the whole business. And I read it in 2004. And I was just kind of laughing, because I thought, wow, when the universe wants you to get busy and get onto something, it'll leave you whatever breadcrumbs you need. And
yes.
So I spent yesterday rereading this book. And as you can see, I'm just showing Barb how many sticky notes and page markers I got on this thing. I couldn't put it down, because all of the things that we've been talking about around this discussion of synchronicity, of course, are in this book. So that was very funny.
Well, that's kind of amazing, because when I was looking on my iPad yesterday for things on synchronicity, as I was reading, I kind of dozed off, because that's what I do these days when I read.
Yeah.
And my finger must have actually kind of fallen and touched the screen of my iPad, because all of a sudden Deepak Chopra's talking to me. And my finger had fallen on a YouTube video of him talking about synchronicity.
That is hilarious. That is hilarious. Well, I love those stories, because I think that, from this non-local, which I would call us the local level of consciousness, where we're a body of consciousness, and then there's a non-local level of consciousness where everything else exists, and that's what Carl Jung called the collective consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
and that it's not personal, but it exists in a in a huge field of energy, and that we tap into that all the time. And when we're focused on something and we have an intention to find or see something, the universe will find a way to show that to us. And it always
Yes.
makes me giggle a little bit, because it's we so often forget that we have that at our disposal.
Yeah,
And so, did you listen to the video?
I did. It wasn't a very long one, but again, because I was kind of drowsy, I'm trying to remember exactly what he said, but I can't. But the fact that you mentioned Deepak and that book, and then I'm thinking maybe I should go get that book.
Well, it's a brilliant book. It's been around for a while. It was published in 2004, but I think it's one of those books that, as I was rereading it yesterday, it's one of those books that's such a brilliant reminder of how connected everything is. And I just wanted to go to another piece of that, because he talks about this non-local domain, and do you remember Larry Dosey, when he first wrote some of the books on the power of prayer and healing and distance healing, and
Yes.
and he talked a lot about non-local events, and they would set up research projects where somebody I can remember specifically about somebody who had surgery, and there was a little bit of a problem in the healing, and they set up a healing session with people who weren't in the same city. And I think it was a 2-week long project. And within the 2 weeks, this healing had improved exponentially, sort of thing.
Oh, wow.
And so that was the first time I heard about, when talking about this non-local kind of energy. And the way that Deepak Chopra describes it, he said the third level of existence consists of intelligence or consciousness, and this can be called the virtual domain, the spiritual domain, the field of potential, the universal being or non-local intelligence. This is where information and energy emerge from a sea of possibilities.
Oh, wow.
He talks about, if you look at the structural, sort of dynamic of quantum physics, there, when you get down to the smallest parts of the atom, they're both wave potentiality and actual structure, matter, and that they are both at the same time, and that the thing that seems to affect which way they develop are by who's looking at them.
Right.
And so this is this idea of something emerging from the field of possibilities is a pretty good indicator that when we are consciously looking for some information or for some help, or just playing with the universe, and we have an intention to see, it's like we are looking at that. We are having a kind of a virtual look at something, that the universe is then looking to see where they can find something like that.
Like a heat-seeking missile.
A heat-seeking missile, and give us an experience of it, which is really hilarious, because we all, we're so serious about everything, and I think at times feel that we're just plunked down in the, on this plane, just like somebody drives by with a a 2-seater engine plane, plunks us down and leaves.
Yeah.
and I know that people have varying experiences of that. And then he says this level of non-local reality operates beyond the reach of space and time, which simply do not exist at this level. We call it non-local because it can't be confined by a location. It is not in you or out there. It simply is.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's not sort of personal. So that story about the Valentine is very cool, because if you think about from an energy point of view or an intelligent point of view, what it takes to orchestrate those, those things happening at exactly the same time, it doesn't make any sense.
I know.
Except when you open your mind to the possibility of synchronicities. There is someone that will laugh about this if she's listening to this later, is a friend of mine, lives out of town, and we seem to have a very kind of a very non-local connection. Something will be happening with one of us, and we'll call or text the other and say, hey, I was just doing that, or I just saw that, or something of that nature, so you kind of realize that those connections also that we have with people are from that non-local level.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, that used to happen with my sister and I all the time. One of us was thinking about phoning the other, and just about at that precise moment, the other one would phone. It hasn't happened for a while, but there was a period of time where it happened a lot.
Yeah, and that's a good example of of that sort of, also of that connection that people have that is beyond the physical connection. That there's a kind of a field of energy somewhere where the even that thinking about someone is affecting somebody else.
Yeah, you tuned into the same channel, the same radio wave.
Yes. So I just love this so much. I'm just going to read one more little paragraph about this because I find this so interesting. He says that non-local intelligence is everywhere at once and can cause multiple effects in various locations. It is from this virtual domain that everything in the world is organized and synchronized. This then is the source of the coincidences that are so important to what he calls synchrodestiny. When you learn to live from this level, you can spontaneously fill your desire. So it's, and of course he talks a lot about what kind of energy intent is.
Mm-hmm.
And they were doing some studies with athletes, and they found that because the athletes were setting certain intentions around say sports moves or something, basketball or whatever, and that they were having them imagine what the play would be. So they were all hooked up to wires and encephalograms and whatever goes on the brain. And the brain activity started before they even had the intention.
Oh, really?
So it's just, and it was quite a large study, and it was, they were sort of baffled at first, like, why is there brain activity now when they haven't yet formulated what this, they're playing an imaginary game of basketball, for example, and before the intention is set, because they were monitoring when they were set the attention, the brain activity already started. So you wonder what kind of do fields are around us all of the time, that are aware of things happening before we even are.
Oh, I'm sure a lot.
Yes. Well, we have that. My daughter and I have that experience quite often. We'll be texting. I'll start texting her, and a text will flow in. It'll be about this kind of the same thing, or I will go to phone her and the phone rings. It's like, do.
Yeah. Well, I think it calls to your attention, and something's telling you, okay, let's pay attention here. And that's what this little blurb here says. Synchronistic experience leave us with a curious sense that we should pay attention, because it grabs you and you think, oh, that's a coincidence, or and so you stop and pause for a moment and think, okay, what's going on? Why should I be paying attention to this? And it could very well be pointing you in a direction that you should be looking, or giving you a message that you should be paying attention to, because it does grab you. I know that we've all had that happen. How far we take it after that, is up to us. And like that one example said, after that, this depends wholly on who you are, or on what you're willing to believe. So I think it grabs all of us at certain periods of time, and then it's up to us how much attention we want to pay to it and put on it, or not. Right?
Well, that leads me right up to the next thing I was going to say is that I think that it's sort of acceptable and accepted that in order to have the sensitivity of it, you first, number one, have to believe that there is a energy that is beyond the physical.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that most people have some acknowledgement or recognition of that. I've had some
Right.
experiences that are sort of strange and whatnot. And that it also requires you developing also a sensitivity towards it, because those synchronistic events are subjective, which means they are about us.
Right.
And that we kind of can develop a sort of sensitivity to it, but through a couple of means. And what Deepak Chopra says about the only reason we don't experience synchronicity in our daily lives is that we do not live from the level where it's happening.
Oh,
Usually we see only cause and effect relationship. This causes that, which causes this, which causes that, linear trajectories, like, one way.
right.
Yet beneath the surface, something else is happening. Invisible to us is a whole web of connections.
Right.
So then he talks a little bit about, developing that sensitivity, because, I mean, we're always in and out of being aware of things, and, we're going about our days, and we're just kind of numb to the, numb to the subtleties of what's going on. And of course, one of the ways that he talks, because he's such a big proponent of it, is through meditation, through that ability to move beyond the physical to a kind of a non-physical sort of awareness, a non-physical sort of focus, so that the thinking mind, which always tries to rationalize the bejesus out of anything that's half interesting, right?
Yeah, that's right.
You might say something to somebody who is very linear thinker, and they'll say, well, it's probably this, it's probably this. And now you go, I should not have told you that. And we all always have somebody like that around us. So with that process of meditation is learning to go beyond the physical to the non-physical, where all of that soup is just bubbling.
Yes.
That we can develop a kind of more of an alertness to it, or more of kind of an awareness to it.
Yeah, just waiting for us to dip our toe in.
That's exactly right. And it seems to me that that's exactly what it is. It's going into that non-physical world. And he says, we consciously participate in the creation of our lives by understanding the world that is beyond our senses.
Mm-hmm.
5 senses, and that's such an old paradigm too, from in terms of the structure of the world, is like, if you can't see it, taste it, smell it, touch it, whatever, it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And we are so far beyond that, and almost limit our experiences in a way that, the more we hang on to that old belief structure, don't you think?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Especially like you say now, like that might have been okay back, kind of like back in the day, but we know so much more now, and so much more is acceptable. It, like what you've said a few times, that it used to be considered, like new agey woo-woo kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But not anymore.
No, and now, when we take a dip into the new physics and the whole kind of area of quantum mechanics and quantum physics,
Mm-hmm.
we now know without a doubt, and it's the most studied thing in the universe right now, is that the world is not solid. Nothing in it is solid. It's ever changing. It's ever moving.
Yeah.
There's nothing solid about anything. And so that the ability to kind of move that ever evolving kind of matter around is really a little bit up to how far we dip into that.
Yes. Whether it's the toe, the foot, or the whole leg.
Or just a full on dive in.
or the whole body.
Well, and I always liked what Ken Wilber said. He's a philosopher, and sometimes he scares me because I don't understand half of what he's talking about. But he always said that you can't study physics from a spiritual point of view. And you can't study spirituality from a physics point of view until you have completely investigated both.
Oh,
And then
okay.
you begin to see some crossover, but you can't look at either one with the eye and with the eye of the other. And I think that's the same thing with synchronicity, is that we have to look at synchronicity through the eyes of the non-physical, the inner eye.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's kind of that. That's kind of an interesting dip into that, isn't it?
Yes, we dipped our toe in today.
Well, I'm always interested to hear about, I mean, if anybody that's ever listening to this wants to share a story of synchronicity, of course, we'd love to hear it. And what about this? Have you been watching anything interesting lately?
You know, I haven't.
Oh.
I haven't been. I've been rewatching it. I think I told you last week. Oh, you know what? There is a show. There is a show that I've been watching. That I've really been enjoying, and it's called Mare. So Mare.
Yeah.
Of East Town.
Oh.
And it stars what's that woman's name that played on the Titanic?
Oh, Kate Winslet.
Kate Winslet. And it's really good. So it's on HBO.
Oh,
and
I've seen the advertisements. Okay, well, that's good to know.
Yeah, it's really good. I think we're about 5 or 6 seasons in, and episodes.
Yeah.
And I think there's a couple more. So yes, so that's what I've been watching. It's really good. So I would recommend that.
Cool. Well, thank you very much. That sounds good. I'll check into that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that was fun.
Yeah.
I learned a little.
Yeah, synchronous. I think everybody can relate to some degree with synchronicity, and even if they don't really believe, that it is what we've been talking about. Even if, like you said, that some people just think that it's just cause and effect.
Yeah. Plain and simple.
Plain and simple as that. I mean,
so let's just invite anybody who's interested to just dip your toes in the water.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, we'll see you next time, Barb.
Okay, bye, Pat.
Bye, Barb.